morning. Kalimerisis. I'm Deborah Wynn Smith. I'm the CEO and President of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness and the President and Founder of the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils, and delighted to welcome all of you at a very early hour because I know everyone was either at sessions or out last night, so we thank you for joining us for this really exciting discussion on the power of partnerships and how working together we can advance the frontiers of economic prosperity, national security, and the overall well-being of our nations and regions in the world. I want to first of all say, following on this wonderful little vignette, how fabulous it is to be back in Delphi for the 10th anniversary. I was one of the merry band of brothers here for the first year in 2016, and I'm honored to serve on the Global Advisory Board. So, as others, I want to commend and thank Simeon Simokas, the visionary founder of Delphi Economic Forum and a member of the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils. I wanted to just mention that in 2022, the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils was very honored to have our 2022 annual meeting, our big Global Innovation Summit, hosted in Athens in partnership with Delphi Economic Forum and Compete Greece. And we had an incredible session with leaders from some 40 countries around the theme we're going to talk about today and continue to talk about placemaking innovation. I want to acknowledge some of the members of the GFCC here in Greece. And first of all, Compete Greece, as I mentioned, Simos Anastonopoulos, the president, founder. Venite, welcome. Delighted to have you. And our industry member that we're very proud of being part of the GFC, Piraeus Bank, and its distinguished CEO, Christos Magalu, has been a fellow of the GFCC since 2015. And the chairman of the bank, George Hadjinikolaou, is one of the board members of GFCC, and I want to thank you formally for your support and active leadership in the GFCC. And also we have one of our distinguished fellows with us today, Athena Chatsapetrou. Thank you for being with us. Just a minute about the mission and purpose of the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils. We are a content partner of the Delphi Economic Forum, but this is an organization that was founded in 2010. It's really a network, a leadership network of organizations, of companies, from universities, and government entities, all focused on how do we develop the strategies and the actions agenda to drive the increases in productivity, increase the standard of living and prosperity of our citizens, and compete in a very fierce global economy through partnerships and collaboration. I am delighted to say that our chairman, Chad Holliday, who was with us in Greece, the former CEO of DuPont, chair of Bank of America, chair of Royal Dutch Shell, sends his greetings and hopes he will join us in Delphi Economic Forum one of these days soon. Last year, we had our big meeting in Belfast and in Birmingham around the themes of placemaking innovation. And this year, we welcome you all. We will be in Pittsburgh, hosted by Chancellor of the University of Pittsburgh, Joan Gable, and the themes will be around the integration of the IT, AI, the whole digital revolutions with bioeconomy, healthcare, and the emergence of the very powerful bioeconomy. Needless to say, in the theme of this meeting, realignment and what's going on, we live in a time of great turbulence, transition, and I would say profound transformation. And collaboration, partnerships, cooperation, dealing with challenges and change, that's at the heart of the human condition. And we have been addressing these transformations and changes, and certainly here in Greece, you think of the alliances and the partnerships with the Greek city-states, going back to the Bronze Age, you know, the Greeks organizing themselves and cooperating to go off and fight the Trojan War. This is not new in the human condition, but we all have to recognize that to move forward, collaboration, partnership, and working together at the heart of that. Of course, we know we're living in a time of not just profound, but ever accelerating technological change and the rapidity. If you just look back in 1 year, you know, on what's happened on AI and the revitalization of nuclear energy, it goes on and on. But we're seeing evolving but new emerging models of collaboration and partnership. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. The partnerships between universities and academia, the partnerships between government and regions, government and civil society. Partnerships, again, are at the heart of advancing our agendas, but also understanding what we need to do in order to be competitive drivers of the future. And then, of course, the large-scale global partnerships are what's absolutely at the heart of being able to address the big challenges in food security, in climate, in environmental, et cetera, et cetera. So partnerships are really the very bedrock of collaboration. Needless to say, more important than ever in geostrategic issues as we see how the world is dealing today with the great rivalry, global competition between the US, China, and as we've discussed over the last few days, the partnerships and role with Europe and other nations therein. So we have a fabulous panel, and I'm going to introduce each of these leaders. Sitting next to me is Christos Magalu, the CEO of Piraeus Bank. Christos, as you know, is a transformative leader. He recently was recognized as Piraeus Bank being the most significant transformative bank in Europe, and I congratulate you for your leadership. You're a recent honorary doctorate of University of Piraeus, and most of all, you've brought your whole career as a global banker and investor to deal with the challenges coming out of the crisis in Greece, but positioning Piraeus Bank to be at the heart of the innovation agenda of the future in Greece and the region. Chancellor Joan Gable, Chancellor of University of Pittsburgh, is a very distinguished academic leader. She has also served as president of the University of Minnesota. She is vice chair of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness, serves on our National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers, and as I said, will be hosting the GFCC in October, and also one of our national competitiveness conversations across America. Charles Kiefel is the founder and executive chair of the Principles Fund Management Group in Australia. He has a distinguished career in finance and investment. He served as the chair of Austria's Super Pension Fund for the military, recently on the board of the Clean Energy Regulator. Very importantly, he's the founder and chair of the Australian Committee and Council on Competitiveness and vice chair of the GFCC. And not last, and certainly not least, is my colleague, Chad Evans, the executive vice president and chief operating officer of the U.S. Council on Competitiveness and treasurer of the GFCC. Chad brings a tremendous wealth of experience in developing many of the complex partnerships we're going to talk about at the fulcrum of innovation and competitiveness. So let me just start with you, Christos, because, again, as I've mentioned, and we all know in this room, your leadership at the bank and bringing all your expertise has really made Piraeus Bank kind of the centerfold of the financial infrastructure of Greece and in the region. And share with us a little bit your vision from a high vantage point of what partnerships and collaboration mean and how you sort of led all of this in the transformation of the bank. And then on the next round, we'll get into more of some of the specifics of some of these great partnerships that you have led, and including the powerful regional partnerships such as in Ioannina.
Yes. Deborah, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Deborah, for this very nice introduction and your kind words. And thank you, the distinguished panel, that we are all here early in the morning. After yesterday, a full day, but there's another day ahead of us. Let me start by saying two things about what's happening around the world. As you know, I was thinking, what are we going to say in terms, and I was preparing for this very interesting panel, and then last Wednesday we realized that the world is becoming a little bit more, let's say, fragmented and with too many barriers, at least around China, around the US. Last week was looking like it could be also around Europe and the world. So there is no doubt that we live in unprecedented times, and where you know, things are happening much faster than they were happening throughout the last decade. So one thing that we should bear in mind is that there is a significant development, which is a trade war between the two biggest economic powers in the world, China and the US. It didn't start that way last Wednesday, but it kind of transpires to be that way as we speak right now. For Europe, there is a chance and a possibility, as our Prime Minister said yesterday, and also in his interview at Breitbart, that Europe could strike a deal, which, of course, it makes Europe's life much easier, but also the US, because Europe and the US are big trade partners. They know that they have to work together. As we know, Europe is about 17% of the global GDP, and a big part of that trade between the world. And there is a possibility for Europe to become, given the fragmentation, the free trade advocate and partner for the world. But that's on the global scale and what is happening now. So if we are in a position to strike a deal with the US, which I think now we have the time to do it, of course, we will know for the immediate future where we are heading. Because as a leader of the biggest bank in Greece and a big organization, what is really profound in my mind is that it's not the same time as it was before last Wednesday on how you plan for the future, because there are too many uncertainties and there are too many things that will have to be taken into account. And that's something that we all have in mind. Now, as far as Piraeus is concerned, and to the issue of partnerships and to the issue of how we have been able to look at this in a way that will help us foster growth and prosperity, both for the country but also for our organization. And I will speak with examples later. There is no doubt that it is very important for us as an institution, and it is very important for us as a bank that predominantly is operating in Greece, mostly. And we have been looking at various ways of building that capacity through partnerships and making sure that we, partnering with the academia, partnering with the government, even partnering with the European Union and the institutions like the EIB, the EBRD, we are in a position to enabling and fostering growth in the country. And that's the way to go. And we will continue doing that in the future and use the capacity that is available in Europe right now through the European Union, but also the capacity that can be created through the partnerships with academia in actually developing the models to improve and increase the competitiveness of the country. Because if we have learned from the crisis of the last few years, and we are in a position to addressing as we speak, is that Greece was not a competitive country. It is much more competitive now, having addressed some of the issues that we had over the last few years and through the crisis, but there is a lot more to do in order to become really competitive in the global, international, let's say, environment that we work on.
Thank you. And let me just ask you before I turn to Chancellor Gabel, you mentioned Greece's competitiveness, but also Europe. And we've heard in a number of the sessions over the last days, references to the Draghi report and the issues, really the structural issues around Europe's productivity lag vis-a-vis the U.S. and in particular. But in terms of the Greek environment for competitiveness, access to capital, financing the entrepreneurship, the startups, but also the large-scale enterprises is at the heart of that. What would you say has been one of the key ingredients that enabled Piraeus Bank to come out of crisis and emerge as such a strong, vital part of the infrastructure for competitiveness in Greece?
Look, political stability was very important. Greece has had the history of political uncertainty over the years, and for us it was very important that we were in a politically stable environment with a strong government, with an agenda that was pro-market, pro-reform, and a prime minister that is in a position to speak to the international investment community with conviction, but also implement the policies and strategies that will bring investment in the country, but also give confidence to the local entrepreneurs and business community to invest in the country. There is still a lot more to be done. There were a lot of structural and fiscal reforms that were taking place the last few years that enabled us to be able to pivot on that and finance the Greek economy. We are, and in 2024, we were the biggest net credit creator in this country. It was a 12% growth in net credit, which was one of the highest rates in Europe, in a European bank, that we were able to achieve. And that was possible because investments are taking place. Foreign direct investment is coming to Greece. Still, there is a lot more to be done, but we are on a growth trajectory and a growth agenda. GDP is growing, confidence is there, and of course, my worry is that what happens now around the world will be influencing Europe, will be influencing Greece, and therefore this positive loop of development and investment could possibly be disrupted.
Thank you. And we'll come back and talk about the structural change and kind of the global rebalancing. But again, congratulations on your leadership and what you've accomplished for the bank, but very importantly, for its role in the competitiveness, future, and strength of Greece. Joan, Chancellor Gabel, you have been, as I mentioned, president of a number of University of Minnesota, now University of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, one of the centers of the Industrial Revolution, now at the forefront of the whole transformation of IT and biotechnology. You run a multi-billion-dollar operation. Partnerships, collaboration at the heart of everything you do. So maybe share a little bit about your vision. You have a tremendous track record of forging some of the most strategic partnerships between university researchers, industry leaders, startups, tech transfer. I mean, everything that needs to be done on the innovation future is happening at University of Pittsburgh under your leadership.
Well, thank you, Deborah, and good morning, everybody. And thank you to my fellow panelists for the opportunity to speak with all of you today. So just a little bit, because I know probably not everybody is familiar with the University of Pittsburgh, just for a little context relative to what Deborah just said. So the city of Pittsburgh is where the steel industry was largely headquartered in the United States, and the tagline that we use in Pittsburgh is that we're the city that built the world by virtue of that steel industry, which has all but completely left the city and put the city into a pretty significant period of financial distress for a couple of decades, and now finds itself in a renaissance, largely driven by the way in which the University of Pittsburgh and our partner private university, Carnegie Mellon University, which is literally next door, we could reach out and touch each other's buildings, has created a creative economy and innovation economy in that city itself, and then also in that region of the United States, which is one of the, I think we could say, less obvious regions of the United States, perhaps as compared to New York or Boston or San Diego, San Francisco, and California, that are more traditionally thought of as the epicenters of innovation economy. So that history is now many decades old. At the University of Pittsburgh, for example, is where the polio vaccine was discovered. The first organ transplants took place that have not only a very strong local effect in terms of cures and treatment and care, but also a global effect by design in being the source of bettering lives in a very literal way, but also in a way that drives an economy in and of itself. So what does that mean for us in terms of partnerships today in the period we find ourselves in general, and then also just in the last few days as things have changed very rapidly, as Christos has said. So in the United States, after the Second World War, there was a very friendly deal struck, speaking of deals, between the research universities, which is a subset of the universities in the United States, and the US, the federal government, that rather than build out an extensive portfolio of national research enterprises, we have some, and they're very, I think very good, but where in many of our partner countries, most of the research would be in standalone research institutes, that research was determined to be best accomplished on the university campuses. And so the federal government funds that research much in the way they would fund a standalone research institute like you see in most of the world. And that research funding becomes a cornerstone leg of the stool of not only the business model of research universities like ours. Just as an example, we did $1.3 billion US in research last year alone, and about 800 million of that was specifically on health sciences research funded by one federal agency of the United States, which is the largest research funding agency, the National Institute of Health, much of which was done by the University of Pittsburgh or in collaboration across the United States and internationally. So that whole structure for how universities are at their best on behalf of our students, on behalf of the faculty and the creativity that they explore, and then on behalf of all of us who benefit from that creativity through the creation of innovation, but also treatments and cures, has been a cornerstone to what US universities have been like. So we're baked in partnership. We really only exist because of this partnership. So fast forward to maybe 10 or 15 years ago, that federal funding of research becomes one step in the process, but we start to think very actively about the translation and commercialization of those outcomes, and obviously that requires a different kind of partnership. So we work very closely with the investment community, the banking community, also with the hospital systems and organizations that support patients in the aggregate, or sometimes individually those very grateful patients who have the means to then recognize what they experienced by virtue of being in the most innovative environment and then want to support it. So a combination of federal government, domestic and global partners, investment from the traditional investment community, and then sometimes investment philanthropically, has led to what is arguably one of the most competitive distinctions in the United States, which is our higher education system. So just some specific examples in Pittsburgh. A little less than a year ago, NVIDIA announced that Pittsburgh would be their first neighborhood, meaning a term that they're using to make a deep dive focused investment in the community, both with traditional investment, i.e. cash investment, but also in-kind investment in the technology that they bring to bear in partnership with the two research universities, Carnegie Mellon more focused on sort of traditional tech, computer science, They're also very known for robotics. And then the University of Pittsburgh also has a comprehensive mission, but very focused on health sciences and the innovation space there. And that led to the University of Pittsburgh being able to launch something called BioForge, Forge referring to the steel industry and how our roots and tradition there. And that facility is able to produce unique pharmaceutical solutions for rare diseases that are normally prohibitively expensive, even in parts of the world where medicine is more supported by the government, less so, obviously, for us, for those of you who are familiar with our system, but in ways that bring the cost down dramatically because we can leverage AI in order to create the solutions and produce the solutions rather than producing at scale. So those sorts of partnerships have been critical to the most basic education of students into their first job, the creation of the research enterprise, and we would argue and I think there's data to bear this out, the creation of the creative economy in the United States, where universities are at the epicenter, but more of a hub, where we then also bring in industry, investment, philanthropy, and other partners in order to create these outcomes. Now, just speaking very briefly to what Christos mentioned, the last few days actually have a pretty profound effect on us too, even though we're not in a traditional sense partners in trade, that everything we do successfully is essentially open source. It's the way we think about what we do. And so if we are to be open and active partners, create things greater than the individual capacity of any one scientist, one scholar, one creator, then we need to be able to network freely. We basically have a free market for ideas at universities, and that has been, without question, the secret to our success, not really a secret, actually, and that is in peril too. So we're very hopeful that as we look to our corporate partners and government partners to strike deals, that enables us to continue to do what we've been able to do as well.
Thank you, and we'll come back and talk about some of the specific partnerships, but also I'll just throw out that, you know, our colleague Alex Subich could not be with us because of the strike. He wasn't able to join us, the Vice Chancellor of Aston University, where I know you got your graduate degree, Christos, in Birmingham, but we're writing a really exciting article called, ready? Birmingham, Belfast, and Pittsburgh, the three epicenters of the Industrial Revolution and how they, together through collaboration, are leading the 21st century innovation economy. Charles, you are a banker, an investor, leader in private equity. You not only manage but raise significant amounts of capital that's deployed, you know, in some of the most strategic industries and sectors in the global economy, energy being one, but others. And of course, you also understand the dynamics of global finance, capital flows, the capital highway. Before we talk a little bit more about the partnerships, but you're partnering all the time with capital providers and capital users. Share with us a little bit, you know, your thoughts, just again, given what's going on in the world, about the kind of restructuring that's underway in the global economy and what this means for competitiveness and prosperity going forward.
Well, firstly, Deborah, thank you for your vision and leadership with the not only the US Council, but also founding the GFCC, the Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils, and your encouragement of the Australian body, to which I'm grateful, and my fellow citizens are too, those involved, and they'll be more involved over time. Also, I think we should acknowledge the Delphi Economic Forum. Semyon, what a wonderful job it's been. It's one of the most impressive forums I've ever attended. It's so well organised, it's efficient, and there's so many people to accommodate. It's quite remarkable. And I also should, just on supporting Deborah, also Chad Evans, who has been tremendously loyal, and I've observed close hand since I met Chad and Deborah 2013. They made me Distinguished Fellow 2016. It was a great honour. And Deborah and I with Chad's support, co-created the Australian body in 2018, I think it was, wasn't it, Deborah? And also on the board, and it's just wonderful to meet people like Joan, who's become a friend, and we're going to the Pittsburgh conference, what is it, the 9th of October?
October 19th.
October the 9th. So
beautiful time of year to be in
come
Pittsburgh,
along to that would be great. Also, I'd like to acknowledge George, my fellow board director, and the success he's had with Chris in building up. I didn't realise the success, being an ex-banker. I was managing director of ANZ Investment Bank, but Piraeus Bank, I didn't realise how effective and powerful their restructuring efforts have been. It's been a great credit to you both in leading that reform. It's not easy to turn around a bank. I've worked in a bank and I know what it's like, and it's remarkable, the restructuring they've done in the bank. And let's talk about restructuring for a moment, because all we're doing here, and I have to say that Australia and the United States are great allies. Our best friend is the United States. And I have to say President Trump, because last night people were talking, and my English friends complain all the time about Trump this, Trump tariff, Trump that. Look, it's President Trump, and he holds the great office of the President of the United States, to which we have to show respect. And it's like the President, like President Kennedy or President Roosevelt, President Eisenhower. These are great people who built our world, and they deserve respect. The high office of the President of the United States deserves some respect. And my superhero of all of them is, when I look back, as Deborah knows, is President Reagan. I mean, President Reagan, what a good-natured, decent man. And you worked with him, didn't you, Deborah? And Deborah can vouch for that, as did Deborah's late husband, a very fine patriot of his nation. So all these people we should remember with respect. And when we go into a room and people start talking about Trump tariffs or Trump did, it makes me very cross about old-fashioned good manners where people need to sit down and start showing respect for that high office. Just on today and about the world today, and I could just simplify it with a bit of hopefully common sense. You look at today and people say, oh dear, the tariffs going up and down and so on. All we're seeing really is you take somebody out for dinner. What do? Do you reciprocate and take them out for dinner? What's happened in the contribution to NATO over the last 2 decades? The United States has contributed most of the money to NATO. What have the French contributed, or the Germans contributed, or the British, frankly? They haven't done their part. So what do? It's a true-up. So I think it's only fair to say that other countries need to do their part equal to the United States. And it's a team effort. At the end of the day, we're living on a planet together, and we need to help one another in a positive way. So I see, really, a lot of the stuff at the moment is just noise. We're seeing two things. One, a restructuring of the world economy, and in particular the US economy, and a repositioning of global trade. And I don't see this as a negative thing. I can see a positive thing here. We could see probably a lot of volatility and noise for the next couple of years, next year maybe, but I can see in 3 or 4 years' time a very positive outcome. The US is going to be restructured, and they'll have a new pathway forward, probably more on its own than it had before. And then if the others don't come into the party and do the right thing, well, that's bad luck to them. If they do, good. If China come forward and drop their tariffs in line with the United States and we have a true up in the world, I think that's a good thing. So I'm not being simplifying things, but there will be a bit of pain early. But after the pain, where will we be? I think in 3 or 4 years' time, we'll see the stock market recover. The next 12 months, I think the stock market will go down. You might say, what did I do as an investor? Last July, and I look at Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's got $330 billion in cash at the moment. And I think you've got to take a lot of notice of Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, why's he got all that money in cash? The S&P 500 PE in the middle of last year was 29. You go back to 1875, it was 10. Why? Now, what is the long-term average of the S&P 500 PE? It's typically 10 to 15. And today, it's dropped from 29 to 24. So I propose the question, is it overpriced? Yes, it's still overpriced. And I'd say I have 45% of my listed assets in cash. 45% in cash, and I put that in cash in June last year. Why? Well, I look at the world, I look at Buffett, $300 billion in cash, I look at the S&P 500 PE, and it's a bifurcated market too. You've got the Magnificent Seven, You know, like NVIDIA, Apple, all the P's above 40. Long-time average, again, is 10 to 15. They're overpriced. But outside of those Magnificent Seven, some of the stocks are not overpriced. And you look at the better priced, better valued stocks, one, like some of the money managers I use, they don't buy those stocks. They buy the cheaper stocks, the better valued stocks. And they look at the market and they try to value stocks. So a lot of value stocks. I represented one of the best value managers in the world twice, ranked the best global value manager. That's LSV. They have $93 billion under management. Now, I can tell you now, they don't buy anything. They don't buy the Magnificent Seven. Now, some of the more glamorous money managers, the growth managers, can buy those, but at periods of time, they do outperform. So you've got a choice in life. You've got a choice of what you buy and what you don't buy. But I'd say, but bottom line is, Deborah, I'll stop talking, is I'm very positive about things. It'll pass, and things will be restructured, and we'll move on. But people have got choices about where they dispose their money. But anyway, I've probably spoken too long. But how's that?
Thank you, Charles, and we'll come back to talk about some of the strategic partnerships as well. Chad, you have been at the council with me for some time, leading our innovation portfolio, building, shaping many of these high-value strategic partnerships that are at the heart of the innovation economy through our National Commission, as well as through our group of CTOs and placemaking innovation. Share a little bit about why partnerships are at the heart of the competitiveness agenda, and a little bit about how we need to create the value for the next wave of these complex partnerships and collaborations.
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, fellow panelists, Delphi Economic Forum. Well, Deborah, you know this. You lead the U.S. Council, but the U.S. Council itself is a partnership. We are a distinctive membership group of CEOs, university presidents and chancellors, labor leaders, and more recently, the directors of our major U.S. Department of Energy national labs. So for 39 years, mark that, next year is our big 40th. So for 39 years, we have been explicitly about leveraging the power of partnerships. I think what has been more distinctive at the U.S. Council over the past maybe 15 or so years, and particularly under your leadership, has been leveraging this private sector partnership more aggressively with the public sector to meet major national and even global grand challenges. And so, you know, Joan talked about Pittsburgh's transition, and in fact, the council did a seminal study in the 1980s around, and in fact, we defined clusters of innovation with Michael Porter at the Harvard Business School, one of our founders. And that seminal work in the 80s and 90s around clusters of innovation was really about trying to understand place-based partnerships. What we're becoming more interested in, and I'll talk a little bit about the evolution, is something different, an evolution around place-making innovation and the partnerships that are needed to intentionally grow regions. And so you mentioned, Deborah, our National Commission on Innovation and Competitiveness Frontiers. This is our flagship project at the Council, really since 2019. It involves nearly 70 of our members. It's an aggressive, forward-looking attempt to define a private sector innovation agenda for the United States, but under the realization that most of what we need to accomplish can't be done by any one sector alone. Joan mentioned that as well. And so we have launched a series of discussions, conversations around the United States to understand what does it take to develop and build these partnerships. We call these our competitiveness conversations. And we've launched now, well, we've had 5 so far, and we have 4 more to go this year, including our conversation in Pittsburgh in October. But what we're really finding is that every region of the United States has distinctive assets and strengths that depend on different actors and stakeholders in the innovation ecosystem to drive that forward. This fits in exactly with our DNA. The Council has often been a catalyst for a series of significant public-private partnerships in the United States. I'll mention a few. In 2013, during the President Obama administration, we proposed a series of ideas to the then manufacturing czar, Ron Bloom. How could we actually optimize U.S. manufacturing competitiveness linked to resurgent energy opportunity? So there was a real moment in the United States, which still exists, to couple this energy abundance with manufacturing renaissance. And so we proposed actually several ideas, and in fact, I would think it's still relevant, and I would commend it to the folks in the audience and online. If you haven't seen it, we have a report called The Power of Partnerships. It actually laid out a series of, through an examination of nearly 200 public-private partnerships across the world, 4 platonic models of what makes a partnership work best, either through governance or funding structures. And we use those platonic models to actually create in the United States a whole range of ideas for the public sector to adopt with the private sector to drive innovation forward. We actually launched with the White House and the Department of Commerce one of those models. It's called Endemic, the National Digital Engineering and Manufacturing Consortium. The idea was to actually link large original equipment manufacturers, Deere, Lockheed Martin, Procter & Gamble, GE, Boeing, utilizing their capabilities in high-performance computing and advanced modeling and simulation, but to drive that through their supply chain down to very small suppliers. Why? To enhance their manufacturing competitiveness and capabilities. And that idea, that pilot, actually inspired all of the relatively still existing, and I would still call relatively new, National Network of Manufacturing Institutes we see around the United States. So the council has this history of catalyzing and really bringing together partners in that innovation ecosystem to create something new. And we could talk a little bit more about those, but you know, our underlying thesis is that with a $30 trillion economy, 330 million Americans, if we think about our innovation ecosystem as a football pitch, you know, we've only got 2 or 3 players on the field at any given time. So what are going to be the partnerships that are going to magnetize and draw in more players on that field to really, truly energize and propel our innovation-based economy going forward? I'll stop there, Deborah, but we could talk more about some of the models. You know, there's a whole chain, everything from pre-competitive research and how do you de-risk and through technology demonstration projects, all the way to very applied research models like Endemic. So there's a range of these public-private partnership models, all of which have a purpose. And I think in a modern global economy, I think our opportunity is actually finding new partners, not only nationally, but globally, with strategic allies to advance around a whole series of efforts we've identified around biotechnology, hypersonics, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, the future of wellness and health. The list goes on, but I think there's a lot of opportunity space for further place-making innovation and actually redefining place, that it doesn't have to maybe be bound to Pittsburgh or to Washington, D.C., but can transcend political borders.
Thank you. Well, you know, I was given very strict orders. We have to finish on time. So, and we don't have that much time because we have a great panel and great discussion. And I always say to Simeon, we need more time, we need more time. But in any event, Christos, share with us, you know, one of the creative, innovative partnerships Piraeus has led that has really had an impact here in Greece because of the bank's vision, resources, and catalyzing the partners for a scalable partnership that you have driven. And anything you want to say kind of as the
I had in my mind 4 examples that we have been, on the many things that we have been doing the last few years in Greece. One of the things that you know, I really want to mention was our partnership with the University of Piraeus. You know, we have been discussing for quite some time before we actually, together with the University of Piraeus, created an MBA in sustainability, which is up and running and operating, has already 15 students in its first class. Is a course that we are financing as a bank throughout, and it takes the students also in collaboration with many universities in the U.S. in cross trips and experiences, especially in the U.S. And it is something that was missing in the first course that is being given the opportunity to top students participate without having to pay anything. And that's one partnership that we think that will have an effect in actually creating competitive resources for the future to be used in Greek financial community, banking industry, and so on. One other thing I wanted to point out is the work that we are doing with the Startup Accelerator and with the Innovation Hub, which is also in collaboration with the University of Ioannina and Patras. In Ioannina, as we have another partnership, let's say, with also the involvement of NATEC, our partner in building and developing the digital bank, Snappy, which is regional as well as academia partnership, for which we have been very proud of. And also, just lastly, want to mention our partnership with Northeastern University in Boston, where we are one
member of the council.
Yes, one of the businesses that last year, in 24, we have hosted 8 students from their master's degree and actually working for 6 months with us as part of the co-op program, and the experience that we got and the acknowledgement of the students of how important it was to work with us and get the experience was really commended very highly by President Aoun as well of the university. So these are 4 examples that I can give. We do a lot more with the Common Agricultural Policy and actually fueling a lot of the Common Agricultural Policy funds to the agricultural sector, but also a lot of work in actually developing models and clusters of growth for agriculture in Greece.
Private sector led, private sector vision, private sector impact that you're creating. Thank you. Charles, I'm going to go to you, and then Joan, ask you to kind of wrap us up.
Very quick.
The
One
US-Australia
example of the partnership is the, which Deborah, you and I, with Greg Hunt, tried to initiate, we did successfully, is the Space Agency in Adelaide. Yep.
The US-Australia Strategic Partnership.
That's right. Well, that's the first one.
You only have 1 minute. You only have 1 minute, Charles.
Sorry?
You've only got 1 minute.
I'm going very quickly here. The second, you keep interrupting. You keep interrupting. That's all right. That's okay. We love you dearly. So the second example of partnership is, I think, profit-sharing plans and employee equity participation. Okay?
No, U.S.-Australia partnership.
Well, that's a very good one.
Minerals.
And then,
blah, blah, blah.
all right, strategic metals. Okay. Well, what we should do with Australia, in a nutshell, we've got 3 main resources. We could do a trade with Donald Trump in exchange for military defence. And that is we have the largest reserves of uranium in the world. 1/3 of the world's uranium. We have the earth metals, and thirdly, we have lots of gas. My client, conflict of interest there with EIG. Is the largest private equity institutional investor in the energy asset, including gas. But gas is very important because you turn it on straight away. You have to wait too long. But certainly uranium. Now, if President Trump is building 30 new nuclear reactors, where does he get the uranium? He can't get it all from Saskatchewan, 14%, or Russia, 12%, Australia only 8%. Australia should be supplying most of that, right? Don't you think, Deborah? So we dig it up and supply it to the United States. Now, that's a deal. What's wrong with that? That's a positive deal. Do you like that?
I like it. But on a serious note, the U.S. Council and the Australian Competitiveness Council, we're taking a major delegation to Australia in July of university presidents, CEOs, for our strategic innovation partnership.
We welcome you to come.
And that's all about collaboration and partnership. Joan, final word on why partnerships are at the heart of everything we do. And I want to thank everybody for joining us because I see that 0 time.
0 time. Okay. So
I'm giving you a few minutes.
All right, thank you. So I would just say that historically universities were always sort of a safe space, if you think about it, where regardless of party affiliation or the desired outcome of investment, there was this idea that we were quintessential conveners that you could bring everyone around the table at a university. It's a role we've always treasured, those of us who make this our career. But in the modern era, this has very much translated into a very applied side to economic development and prosperity, and all of the relating outcomes associated with that: social mobility, national security, and all of the things that we would desire in terms of the service component of the universities. And I would say that the fact that universities are now sitting at the epicenter of economic development, something we would have never thought of as anything other than a happy byproduct, is now an intentional strategy, that this is what we all need to do in all of the different ways in which we might come to that table, is create things that are greater than the sum of their parts. I mean, when things contract in the way that Charles was describing, that's actually the greatest opportunity to leap ahead, is amidst constraints.
Yep.
And those who will be the most successful in that environment are those who have the right strategic alliances and partnerships.
Well said, well said.
Thank you. And I will just close by again thanking everyone, our great panel. We needed another hour.